Hello guys, welcome back to another review video. We're going to have a look at this video. It says how to actually lose fat, tone up with a full science-based guide. I love science-based creators. A lot of my programs are also very evidence and science-based. The main difference is how you interpret the science. Alright, now I don't know this person, don't know the creator, it just popped up on my screen, and we're going to just have a deep dive into see what she says. Interesting learning experience for everyone. Let's do it.
In this video, I'll tell you exactly what you need to do to lose fat, tone up, and transform that beautiful body of yours into its fittest version ever. And in case you're wondering if you should even listen to me, I'm a health coach with certifications in nutrition and fitness, and everything in this video is based on current research.
Sounds promising.
This video is going to be structured into 5 main sections. First, I'll briefly go over how our metabolism works and what you should know about calorie math, aka calories in versus calories out. And then we'll talk about how you can adjust your diet, your exercise routine, and other lifestyle habits that science shows that actually work to make losing fat and toning up a lot easier and sustainable. I'll put time.
Awesome. Very good intro. I'm interested. You've got me on the hook. Let's go.
Timestamps down below in case you want to skip ahead. Let's start with part number 1. How does our metabolism even work? Put very simply, our metabolism is basically what your body does with the food that you put into it. And one of these food conversion processes is the derivation of energy from your food, also known as calories. The energy or calories that our body burns every day is also called our total daily energy expenditure, which basically consists of 4 parts. First, the basic metabolic rate, which is often referred to when we talk about our metabolism, to boost our metabolism. And that's the energy your body burns by just being there. If you would just lay around all day, this BMR is what your body would burn.
Yep, so just to lay in bed, keep the lights on. A lot of people say, don't eat below your BMR, your metabolism's going to crash and burn. It doesn't work that way. So BMR, or interchangeably RMR is another one, or your resting metabolic rate. Is used interchangeably. Arguably, again, me being on a bit of a tangent, BMR, RMR are actually slightly different. One is just resting energy expenditure, and one is basal. Basal is the one where you completely lay in bed, just think of it like if you're in a coma.
Which accounts for about 70% of the calories your body burns every day.
Correct. And do you know why? Fun fact. So your BMR is mostly made up of things like your muscle, bone, but most importantly, your organs. And this is why larger people have a larger BMR. And they think that it's because they have substantially more muscle mass. Incorrect. It's actually because a larger person needs larger organs to function. They just need more machinery or bigger machinery to maintain their weight, for example. So if you were to take a cross-sectional area of something, so for example your liver versus your muscle, your liver would burn, I couldn't give you exact numbers, but 20 times the amount of calories per size of tissue, which is why shorter people have a lower BMR, and this is why larger people have a bigger BMR. So the context around this, and this is an interesting way to start thinking about your body, is the way that when you think of a fast or a slow metabolism, which is how people tend to think about it, you should actually be thinking about this as a larger or smaller metabolism, right? So smaller you are, the smaller your organs, the smaller the chemical processes, or the less chemical processes need to happen, and the larger you are, the larger those organs are, so therefore it's just going to burn substantially more calories. Interesting fact.
70%. Next chunk is the so-called NEAT, which is the non-exercise activity, which accounts for about 15%. And this non-exercise activity can be anything, any type of movement that is not conscious exercise. So for example, fidgeting or moving your hands while talking, pacing up and down your apartment, taking the stairs, all of that kind of stuff. Then there's the exercise activity, which is the calories that your body burns while exercising, which is only about 5%, which is very often overestimated. And then
Absolutely agree with this. People think that they go to the gym for 30 to 45 minutes and they're burning 700 calories. Small women, even moderately sized men, myself for example, you'd be lucky to be pushing on a really hard session, even for a dude, maybe 400 calories in a weight training session.
Then there's the thermic effect of food, which accounts for about 10% of your daily calories. And that's the energy your body needs to digest the food that you eat. And the sum of these four...
And that is provided you're eating actually mostly a whole food-based diet, by the way.
Chunks is the calories that your body burns every day. And a very basic rule of thumb to calculate the basic metabolic rate is to take your body weight in kilos times 0.9 if you're a woman times 24 hours. If you're a man, that's just your weight in kilos times 24. But this only gives you a ballpark because the energy your body needs also depends on factors like your body composition, aka how much muscle versus how much body fat your body has. Because a pound of muscle, for example, burns about 6 calories, while a pound of fat only burns about 2 calories, which is 3 times less than muscles. So muscles burn a good amount of calories just by being in your body.
Yes, but the difference over the long term really isn't that big. So there has been studies done where they take people and they shrink them down to smaller people, like they lose body fat. And a lot of people will say that you need to weight train to boost your metabolism, right? The more you increase your muscle mass, the more calories you're going to burn at rest. Technically correct, but as you can see, there's only like maybe a 3 to 4 calorie difference if you were to lose a kilo of fat versus gain a kilo of muscle. So it really isn't that big, but we never want to be in the situation where we're losing muscle mass. It's just never a good place to be.
Passively being there. The average person needs about 2,000 calories every day, and when you eat those 2,000 calories or whatever is applicable to you, and you also burn those 2,000 calories, your weight stays the same. In general, when you eat less than your total energy expenditure, you lose weight. If you eat more, you gain weight. However, it is very important that if you want to lose fat, yes, you need to be in a caloric deficit, but it is so important to not overdo this caloric deficit, whether that's by eating less or by working out more. Impatience here does not get you far. Well,
this is where I disagree. So your rate of weight loss can, and I believe should be based on how fat you are. I've done this in hundreds and hundreds of videos. How fast you want to lose the weight is going to be determined by how much body fat you're currently carrying, and number 2, your personal preference for either aggressive dieting or not. Now, I find that people usually get into trouble with these kind of things when they're going very low in calories, very high in activity, and they're not weight training. So think of people just doing heaps and heaps of cardio, not eating enough protein. You can crash diet your way down to a lean body, but it's definitely not going to be a healthy way to do it. However, there are people who do things like mini rapid fat loss phases. I've done these in the past as well, where it's just a matter of I'm going to push my calories on the lower side, do it for a short amount of time, and then just get back to my healthy eating habits, which are already established. So again, it's a little bit subjective in terms of the rate of weight loss. On average, 0.5 to 1% is a healthy range. Again, it depends on the person, their personal preference, their body fat percentage, things like that.
Some people might be of a different opinion. The consensus in research says that you should not do a caloric deficit bigger than 500 calories.
Rubbish. This is absolutely factually incorrect. Now, the research says, and at least for people who want to lose the weight, people who go more aggressive with their diets, and obviously you stick to it, people who lose weight faster, fat faster, lose more total weight and also keep that weight off. So if I had to pick one, and it was just my only option, I would pick rapid fat loss over a moderate deficit every single day of the week, because you get better outcomes. Generally speaking, you actually get better adherence for most people, provided you don't have an ED, for example. And people tend to keep more weight off. Now, I'm not sure where this is coming from, but we'll find out.
Absolute minimum amount of calories that every person should eat is 1,200 calories. For men, it's 1,500 calories.
Again, completely disagree with this. So let's have a look at my little handy dandy chart. The minimum amount of calories is going to depend on your body fatness. So if you're obese, and this is again what your body is capable of, not necessarily what you should do. There's a very big difference between what you can stick to and what your body's capable of actually doing. So again, if you're obese, let's say your maintenance calories is 2100, you're a short female, you train 2 days a week, get maybe 8,000 steps a day, but you're like 5'2" and you're pushing like 80, 90 kilos. I'm just making numbers up in my head, right? You can diet on 800 calories a day, eating pretty much just protein. Now, is it a fun way to diet? Arguably, it depends. You're going to get fast results. You're going to get to your goal a bit faster. Even with someone who's in the overweight range, you can still diet on technically up to about half of your total daily energy expenditure. So for example, if I was overweight, so let's say I got up to like 80, 85 kilos, my maintenance is probably going to be somewhere around 2,600. I could technically diet on close to 1,300 calories a day. All right, so gender it makes no difference whether you're a male or female, right? It depends on your body fat percentage, so how fat are you, and what is your total daily energy expenditure. Arguably, for health outcomes, it is better to lose weight as fast as you can do it whilst getting your protein requirements, whilst doing weight training in the gym, getting your steps up, eating a nutrient-dense diet, not a shake diet, because the faster you lose that fat, you get to a healthier metabolic outcome. Right? You get out of risk of the bad stuff, diabetes, heart disease, various cancers, etc.
And this is really the absolute minimum. If you go this low, which is not advisable, you should not do that for longer than 1 or 2 weeks.
Again, don't agree with this. The science doesn't agree with this as well. As long as you're getting enough protein and you're eating a mostly whole food diet, how long you stick to your deficit is going to depend on your body fatness. If you're morbidly obese, if you've got 50 kilos you need to lose, you could well and truly diet for a year on close to 1,000 calories. Not saying you should or you have to. There is a very interesting study that was done on a guy called Angus Burbury, I think it is, where the dude fasted for an entire year. Ate nothing at all. Don't recommend it. You're going to have a bad time. But you're welcome to Google it. Have a look. He ate no food except for some basic supplements and some yeast, I think it was. And he just lost fat every week. Have a look. It's very interesting.
Because after 1 or 2 weeks, if your body does not get at least 30 calories per kilogram of lean muscle mass, it's gonna panic and think that it's starving. That's something that you really do not want.
Now, this is where the science-based guide starts to fall apart. Anyone that is claiming that your body's going to go into quote-unquote starvation mode or panic mode is not an evidence-based coach, unfortunately.
And while that sounds very exact, calorie math is not an exact math. Because even if you track every single calorie, very likely you're not tracking correctly, because it's basically impossible to know how many calories exactly are in the food that you eat. Just as it's basically impossible to track exactly how many calories you burn, no matter how good your activity tracker is.
I pretty much agree with this statement. So it is hard to get a very exact calorie amount. But if you are eating very regular foods or very similar foods and you're eating it very regularly, it's just a matter of about averages over time. When you calculate your calories initially, you're always calculating your activity in that as well. So my preferred method to do this is you have a set calorie target. You can eat that every day or as close to that every day as you can. Are you getting results, yes or no? Yes, keep going. No, calories need to come down. We don't need to overcomplicate it too much.
Because even things like mental stress, how much sleep you got, how exactly you prepared your food, all of these factors influence your calorie math. Still, obviously, it can be very helpful to track. For some people, however, tracking their calories is not the smartest idea because it can mess up their relationship to food, and or it's just not sustainable because it can be really annoying to track everything that you eat and every activity that you do. So for other people, intuitive eating is the best choice.
I don't agree with intuitive eating. I do believe that the eventual goal is to get to a point where you can eat most foods without having to weigh, track, and measure your food. But this is going to be highly individual. I used to be an obese kid, right? My tendencies, and this is for the people who are obese and they've always struggled with their food. If you have always struggled, you're probably going to have to track your food to some degree for pretty much the majority of your life. I do believe the sooner you can come to terms with that, the better your outcomes are going to be. I used to be an overweight kid. I've still got fat kid tendencies, right? I will still get to the point where I will continue eating even though I'm hungry. I don't necessarily need the calories or the food. I don't see food or tracking food as necessarily a nuisance. It's just one of those things, people have their own crutches, right? So for example, someone who is $20,000 credit card in debt, I'm not going to just say to them, just practice spending money occasionally, right? You want to know how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. You will want to track it. You will want to cut up your credit card because you can't be trusted, right? This is where individualization comes into it. But I do believe that eventually, once you've done tracking for long enough, because so many people just have no idea how many calories are in foods, or some people still don't even believe necessarily in calories in, calories out. But you'll get to a point where you can just eyeball food and you can be like, yeah, that's about a 500 calorie meal. I'm getting enough protein in this meal. And I don't track calories meticulously all year round. I'll go through phases. If I get a little bit too fat, which I still go up and down in my weight, I will just diligently track everything for a little while, get the fat off, and then I'll go back to loosely tracking. I might just track only my protein and just eat until I'm somewhat full. But again, I have fat kid tendencies, so I tend to always eat more than I need. So this is always going to come down to an individual basis. And just to further my point a little bit more, there really isn't that much evidence to support that tracking your food is going to cause disordered eating behavior. If anything, it actually is the opposite.
Whether tracking or intuitive eating is the right choice for you is a whole nother topic, and I will soon make a video about that. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. You might have heard about that 3,500 calories cuts per week thing, which equals about a caloric deficit of 500 calories every day. And when you do this, when you eat 3,500 calories less every week, you lose about a pound of body weight every week, according to that formula. But it's not that simple. Because first, your body is a very smart machine and it will adjust to your caloric deficit. When you don't eat as much as your body needs for more than a couple of weeks, your body's thinking, I'm missing something here. I'm not getting the energy that I need. So I'm going to slow down my metabolism so that the reduced foods that I'm getting is still going to be enough to sustain all the functions that I'm doing.
Yes, this is called metabolic adaptation. And there's nothing to be scared about. It is really nothing that you can control. It's going to happen. So this is why we base our results on a percentage of body weight changes per week, and or are you still losing measurements per week, right? If not, either activity has to go up or calories have to come down, and there's nothing you can really do about that.
Plus, eating too little is also very likely gonna mess up your relationship to food by feeling too restrictive, and that's pretty likely to lead to overeating or binging, or in general, an unhealthy relationship to food.
This is subjective and not based in science.
If you only eat less without working out and without making some more adjustments to your diet, you're not only going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose muscles. And that's something you do not want, because if you lose muscles, first, that's not healthy. And second, your metabolism is going to slow down. In general, in order to lose body fat, you need to be in a caloric deficit. But to gain muscle, you need to be in a caloric surplus.
Incorrect. And this has been factually proven, again, with science and evidence. I don't have all of these studies to bring them up on the screen, but you don't need to be in a surplus to gain muscle. Actually, you can gain muscle in a deficit, provided the stimulus is high enough, meaning you're training enough. My personal preference is training everything at least body part-wise 2 times per week. You're training with high intensity, meaning you're training to involuntary failure, meaning the weight must be slowing down without the intention of you trying to slow the weight down. Training hard, getting enough protein, getting enough rest. You can still build muscle in a deficit, and getting enough protein as well.
However, it is also possible to do both at the same time, which is called body recomposition, meaning you recompose, you change the composition of your body. And you can do this by going only into a slight caloric deficit, no more than 500, rather 200 to 300 calories a day. You increase your protein intake and you do resistance training. And in order to not...
This is again a bit more subjective. If you're morbidly obese, don't listen to this part, right? You need to get the fat off the body. You need to get healthy. I would arguably say that this is a bit more correct once you are very lean, so for a dude, as you're closer to like 20%, and arguably that's not very lean, but 20% up to about 15% or below is when you could probably go at a slower pace and try a bit more of a recomp diet. For women, you're looking very lean levels is about 20-ish percent, 17, 20-ish percent, and maybe about 27% is like on the higher end of that threshold of healthy. It just, again, depends on your goals. Do you want to just lose fat faster? Cool. You may not gain as much muscle as quickly at that stage. But if you just lose the fat faster, get to your goal, then you just get out of the deficit faster. And then if you lost any muscle during that phase, you're going to gain that back when you go back to maintenance. So sometimes people think of this as like the boogeyman, and if you lose any muscle, it's the worst thing in the world. Muscles are much more like an inflatable balloon than it is the tissue itself just turning into dust and evaporating into thin air.
Only lose fat, but also build muscles. Next to the calorie math, you should also focus on your protein math, which is a lot simpler. Research says that you should aim for 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, which, for example, for a 130-pound person or 58-kilogram person is about 90 to 120 grams of protein. And
I would generally recommend trying to estimate what your leanest body weight will be. So, for example, I like to use about 12% as a male, about 20% as a female. So you can go get a DEXA scan done. You can just use an online calculator like an Omni calculator, the Navy SEAL body fat test method. If you can figure out what your lightest potential body weight's going to be, times that by 2 in kilograms. So for example, for me to get like 10% body fat or very, very close to, I'd be somewhere 70 kilos or below, right? I would then times that 70 kilos times 2, and that's how many grams of protein you would need. Because anything that you lose between now and your lean self, so women about 20%, men is about 10-ish percent, 12%, all of that's body fat. Or ideally, all of that's body fat. And your body fat doesn't need protein. So this is why I don't necessarily like using total body weight, and sometimes even trying to predict lean mass can be a bit iffy. But that's generally like, and again, this is still on the high side. So you can even go as low as 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. 1.8 grams is like a safety measure. But if you care more about building muscle, I like to go with 2 grams per kilogram of your target body weight. And that target body weight should be a very lean version of yourself.
And it's best if you distribute this protein intake across meals. So try to aim for at least 30 grams of protein per meal. And here's
This makes more sense if you're in a deficit. It's probably a bit better to spread it out a bit more. But look, unless you're a bodybuilder competing on stage, the most important thing is always getting enough total protein by the end of the day. So what does this look like hypothetically for me? I prefer to fast in the morning. I prefer to train fasted. I might have a little bit of carbohydrates before I train. And then I would just push all of my calories and my protein intake to lunch and dinner. My strength is still going up. I'm still losing body fat. It's a win-win. You don't need to get scaremongered into having to eat 3 meals a day, 30 grams of protein per meal. It is just mostly a personal preference.
Here are some examples of how 30 grams of protein look like. And in case you're thinking, I don't need protein because I just want to get skinny, think again, because first, your body needs protein to build muscle, and especially if you're in a caloric deficit, not to lose muscles. If you only lose weight, aka fat and muscles, your body will look slouchy and not very toned. But not only that, also the macronutrients that you eat have an impact on the calories that you burn. Remember earlier in the formula of your total daily energy expenditure, there was that one part that made up 10% of the calories you burn every day is the thermic effect of food. And the TEF of protein is about 20 to 30%, while the TEF of carbs is only 5 to 10%, and that of fat is only 2 to 4%. Which means, for example, if you eat 500 calories in protein versus 500 calories in carbs, those calories are effectively worth 350 calories for protein and 450 calories for carbs, respectively. Meaning you can basically eat more when you eat protein than when you eat carbs or fat. But just because the TF of fat is pretty low and the calorie content of fats is pretty high, does not mean that you should cut out fats, because your body needs healthy fats for many bodily functions, including hormone health. And
Correct. agree with pretty much everything that she's saying. But you don't have to necessarily force feed yourself protein, especially with a lot of women who I train. Protein is usually the lowest macronutrient next to the carbohydrates and fats. So we want to just make sure we're getting enough protein. All right? We don't want you to be living on chicken breast and beef mince.
You do not want to neglect your hormone health. And also including fat with every meal is important in order to feel satiated. Again, because without fat, your satiation hormone won't work properly. A good aim.
Disagree with this. I can get up in the morning, I can fast right through until 2 o'clock and get no hunger whatsoever. Yes, it does slow down digestion. Again, it's a personal preference. Some people prefer a higher fat diet, less carbs. Some people prefer a higher carb, less fat. And again, as long as you're getting the minimum healthy fat amounts and you're getting omegas and whole food based fats, perfect. No issues at all. Don't stress too much about it.
Aim is to eat about 0.5 to 1 gram of fat per kilo of body weight. And once you have your minimum amount of protein and your minimum amount of healthy fats in your diet, you can fill up the rest of your available calories with carbs. And here you should focus on complex carbs, meaning veggies, fruits, the not so sweet fruits, grains, and starches like sweet potato.
Any fruit is fine, to be honest. Anyone who tells you you can't eat a certain type of fruit is full of it and is not evidence-based. Again, not a personal attack to this person. It's just fruit never made anyone fat. Just any fruit you like, even if it was slightly higher in sugars, it gets balanced out with the micronutrition and the fibers you get from the fruit.
And yes, carbs are the least important macronutrient of the three, but still, you do need carbs, especially if you work out, right?
Technically, no. Carbs, you don't actually need to live. But life is going to be pretty miserable without carbs.
Choosing complex carbs over simple ones, so brown rice, sweet potatoes, or buckwheat over white pasta or soft white bread or donuts, you're full for longer, and it's easier to listen to your body's hunger signals because those hunger signals are honest, they're real. If you mostly eat sugar or simple carbs, your body will keep sending you hunger signals even though you've already reached your calorie limit.
This is partially true. Processed carbs don't keep you as full. It doesn't stretch out your stomach receptors because it doesn't fill out the stomach as much. They're very moreish foods, like when you have some chocolate, ice cream. They're virtually engineered so you can eat more and more and more of them, and they don't take up as much space in your stomach. That's how food companies make their money. They want you to buy more food. There is also something called the protein leveraging theory, which is basically a theory that means your body will keep you hungry until it meets its protein requirement. So again, going back to my main point, getting enough total protein in the day is going to be your first goal. So that's goal number one. But if you're still not getting enough total protein by the end of the day, let's say it's only like 40 or 50 grams and you're weight training and you're active, you're probably still going to be hungry. And it's probably because you're missing out on total protein. So it's not that quote-unquote junk food makes you hungry. It's probably the lack of nutrients and whole foods that is probably making you hungry.
And I do want to mention here that fruits do count as carbs, especially sugary fruits. Fruits are healthy, yes, but the sugary fruits like bananas or mangoes do have a lot of sugar in them. Before you get me wrong, I'm not saying stop eating fruits, I'm just saying keep in mind that they're carbs. Next to macronutrients, there are micronutrients, especially fiber. And while vitamins and other micronutrients are not directly relevant for weight loss or body composition, they are indeed indirectly relevant because they directly influence your gut health. And your gut health has been shown by science to directly influence how well we lose fat and gain muscle. And also it impacts our overall mental and physical health. But especially fiber is something you should most likely increase in order to stay full for longer and hence make it easier for you to not overeat in terms of calories. And also again,
absolutely agree with this statement. Fiber is good for you. You should eat more fiber, veggies and fruits. Supplemental fiber is also fine. With fiber, some people have gut problems with certain types of fibers and fermentable fibers. You have to figure out what is right for you, obviously. Just because someone says you have to have this amount of fiber, you may do better on just a slightly less fibrous diet. You may have to increase fiber slowly, otherwise you get gas, bloating, cramping, etc. But it is worth, especially if you're back at maintenance calories, it is worth getting your fiber back up. With women, it's somewhere around 20 to 30 grams a day, I'd say is a pretty good range. For men, somewhere around 25 to even upwards of 40 grams of fiber a day, which is a lot of veg, don't get me wrong.
Fiber is very important for gut health. Then you should really look at your water consumption, because it is very likely that you're not drinking enough water. Hydration is so important always, but especially when you want to lose fat and gain muscle. First, because very often when you think that you're hungry, you're actually just thirsty. So next time before you snack, chunk down a glass of water.
Don't necessarily agree with this and would like to see more evidence on this.
Second, water or fluids in general fill up your stomach. So again, you eat less. Third,
you know what's even better? Diet sodas. Because there has been studies that have been done that show you when you ingest diet sodas, you get better outcomes of weight loss versus the water-only groups. And that's theory behind that is because the gas in the stomach fills it out more. So, and it's tasty. I like to drink diet sodas. Water is boring. But don't take to the saying Shannon said, you shouldn't drink water. You should drink water.
Drinking enough water significantly can boost your metabolism by up to 30%. 30%. Plus, again, hydration is super important for your overall health.
This is not a true claim, and this is a misrepresentation of the evidence. So let me find my little notes here. I look through some of the notes at the bottom here, which references all the studies that she's talking about. So the specific articles that she's talking about was the 2013 JCDR article. Now, this is not the one where it found that there was a 30% boost in metabolism in regards to water, all right? So the main one that everyone references with this boost is the Bosman 2003 study, which showed short-term metabolic bump in about 30% roughly for an hour. So again, nuance makes a big difference here. I heard from this YouTuber online that when I drink this much water, I burn an extra 30% calories, right? Factually incorrect. It translates to getting about an extra 24 calories for every 500 ml above your baseline intake. So let's say your baseline intake is like 2 or 3 liters a day. Then you have to drink another 1.5 liters a day on top of that. And it only shows that the 30% increase in basal metabolism is only an extra 60 calories a day, right? Because it's only for a short time. It's only for about maybe 30 minutes to an hour after the ingestion of that. Arguably, and these are just my thoughts, that extra 24 calories is probably you just getting up and going to the toilet 30, 40 times a day. Then it is actually the water itself causing an increase in your metabolism.
Health. And here's a little example of how your meal plan could look like. Obviously, adapt that to your own preferences and your body's needs. Good guideline is to focus your meal planning around your protein, then add some healthy fats to it, which is pretty easy because it can just be olive oil or some nuts or nut butter or also fatty fish, for example, and then fill the rest of your calories with carbs of your choice. Preferably complex carbs. So diet is the most important part when it comes to any type of body or health transformation. Science shows that your physique and your health is influenced by up to 70% of what you eat. So for starters, try to focus on your diet first. Then let's talk about exercise, which is obviously also very important when you want to transform your body.
Yes, you should be weight training. Every single person living should have a gym membership. If you don't, go get a gym membership. Go to the gym. You should be training at the gym. They are so cheap these days. $20, $30 per fortnight, somewhere around that range. On the minimum side, you don't necessarily have to hire a coach or a trainer, although I do think it's a good investment. I am biased. I am a coach. Learn what machines, everything look like, what they feel like to use, how to train with intensity. But everyone should be training from the second you can walk into a gym up until you can no longer physically get yourself to a gym. It is one of the best things you can do for your body.
So the best thing that you can do to help yourself to exercise regularly is to find a routine that works for you. And even if that routine only includes 10 minutes of workouts a day, give yourself at least 2 weeks to get used to your new routine. And if you feel overwhelmed, start a bit smaller. You should aim for resistance training about 3 to 5 times a week, and maybe include some cardio 1 or 2 times a week. Cardio is not necessary for weight loss or muscle gain. It's just good for your overall health and especially your mental health.
Correct. I agree on pretty much both accounts. I do actually have some clients who train as little as 2 times per week. I would recommend at least minimum twice. The sessions are going to be a bit longer because you just have to do more in that session. I like the sweet spot of about 3 times per week. If you really just love the gym, 5, even up to 6 days a week is okay. Arguably, you'd never need to be in the gym 7 days a week. If you care about heart health, 20 minutes of cardio kind of every other day, and cardio is different to your steps, by the way. Keeping your heart rate about 120 to 130 beats a minute on average, somewhere around there is okay.
Here's a little example routine. Just feel free to take this and adapt it to your needs and your daily life. Resistance training should be your main focus, not because it burns a lot of calories, because it doesn't, but because it builds your muscles. And when you have muscles, as mentioned before, your metabolism automatically burns more calories.
We started well. Yes, it is going to increase your metabolism, but not to the degree that you think it will.
Plus, you just look more toned when you have muscles. Otherwise, you're just gonna look skinny fat. Before you say, I don't want to do weight training because I don't want to look bulky. Women will not look bulky just because they weight train. People get bulky when they weight train and eat a lot of calories. When you're in a caloric deficit, you physically cannot bulk up. You can only tone down and get strong and lean, which is what we want. With cardio, you do burn more calories than with weight training, but when you burn
again, objectively incorrect. Cardio, minute for minute, and weight training burn about the same amount of calories, provided you're not doing some super high intensity interval training sprint or group class. The main benefit of weight training is you get the added benefit of building muscle long term, which is always a pro.
More calories while doing HIIT workouts, for example. After that, you will also be hungrier and eat more. So all that work during that hard cardio workout will be for nothing. So cardio is good for your health, but it's not necessary for fat loss. What you want to do instead for burning calories is increase your NEAT. Remember that chunk of the calorie formula? And the easiest way to increase your NEAT is by walking everywhere, whether it's walking to an appointment or walking around your neighborhood in your lunch break or when calling a friend. There's a reason why they call it the hot girl walks. But not only walking, also things like walking around in your apartment when you're on the phone or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. All of these things increase your NEAT.
Absolutely. Keep your steps somewhere in the range of about 8 to 12,000 steps a day. From my experience, usually once you get past 12,000 steps, you'll probably find that it starts to get your hunger will start to drastically increase from there. So I like the sweet spot of around 10,000. It's just a nice easy round number. Everyone likes 10,000 steps. 8 to 12,000 is usually my guidelines for my clients.
Which again accounts for up to 15% of your daily energy expenditure, which, if your body needs 2,000 calories, is 300 calories, which is, remember, all the deficit you need for body composition, aka for losing fat and building muscle. However, even if you eat well and work out regularly, it'll only get you this far if you don't do this next thing right, which is to take care of your sleep. This study shows that when people cut back on sleep for only 2 weeks, while keeping everything else the same, the amount of fat they lost decreased by over 50%. 50. And that's because when you're sleep deprived, your body is under so much stress that the things that you need to be conserving more energy, so it hangs onto your fat a lot more than if you would have gotten enough good.
Kind of correct, and yes, I do agree with this statement. Sleep is probably the most important thing you can do for your health, aside from weight training and eating a healthy, balanced diet. There have been studies that have been done where they can show sleep-restricted groups actually lose muscle and gain fat on the same calorie deficit as groups who got enough sleep. Sleep will be the foundation of whether or not you actually stick to the program or not. And usually if you're hungry or you're tired, you're miserable, it's usually because of the lack of sleep, at least from my experience of working with clients.
Sleep. Plus, when you're tired, you tend to want to eat a lot more and a lot unhealthier, because that stress will make you want to eat more in general, and especially more high caloric food, which is also why another thing that is crucial when losing fat and building muscle is to stress less. And I know this is easier said than done, but increased levels of stress, especially over a longer amount of time, will harm your progress, because your body will not want to let go of that extra fat because it thinks that it needs to hold on to that energy storage. And also
Kind of correct. It just makes weight loss harder. When you have less stress, things are easier, right? The amount of recovery you have will be less because your body's going to be thinking of other things, or your mind's going to be thinking of other things. Your body doesn't have compartmentalized stress. So people think like my stress for work is over here and my stress for training is over here. It's basically just an all-encompassing ball of stress. And when it's too much, either you fail, crash and burn and you can't stick to the program, you find it's going to be too hard, you don't sleep as well because you're stressed. Managing your stress is super important, but I don't believe stress in of it itself will actually cause you to retain fat. This is the whole cortisol belly kind of problem people run into.
Also, again, it'll make you eat more and more unhealthy stuff. If you struggle with being stressed out a lot, have a look at my video here where I share tips on how to stress out less and to
one of the best things you can do is meditation.
Lower your cortisol levels. If you want to make it even easier for yourself to get lean and healthy, have a look at this video right here where I share 31 health cheat codes that have really been a game changer for me. Other than that, I wish you all the best on your health journey. Let me know in the comments if there's a specific part that you struggle with and that you would want to see a video about. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found this helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. Hopefully you got some insights from an evidence-based coach from myself who's been working with people for the last 15 years. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments below. If there's any videos you'd like me to cover off, pop them in the comments below. I'll take a look. If you feel like you want some help with this, I do this for a living. I work with clients online and have done so 15 years in total. I used to be a fat kid. I am no longer fat. So hopefully that gives me some credit, right? I don't know. That's all. All right, guys. See you in the next video.